right, I think we are live and on. Hello to everyone who's coming back to the stream from hopefully taking a little bit of a stretching break. If you've joined us now for a few sessions, unfortunately, this is our last of 6 sessions that we've had this weekend here with the Jam City team. But fortunately for you, this is on a really good topic. I'm really excited to be joined this afternoon by two leaders in our studios here at Jam City who head up our UI/UX design as well as our art direction for one of our studios as well too. Vincent and Jackson are going to be dropping some nuggets of wisdom for everyone who's tuning in today around portfolios. I have sat in on a ton of portfolio reviews, and I'm so excited to be joined by two leaders here who are actually, always hiring for different members of their teams. I'm sure even if they have an open role or not, they're always looking for people on their teams. So I'm excited to be getting their input this afternoon around really what makes a strong portfolio, specifically within the games industry as well too. So if this is your first time seeing my face this weekend, my name is Andrew. I'm a member of our recruiting team here at Jam City. I use he, him pronouns as well too. If you've heard my voice all weekend, I'm so sorry. You're probably tired of it by now. But without further ado, I'm going to let Vincent and Jackson introduce themselves. If y'all wouldn't mind just letting us know who you are, your preferred pronouns, your role here at Jam City, and then if you wouldn't mind spending a few minutes kind of giving us a general background as to how did you get to where you're at now. I'll start with Jackson.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jackson Wang. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the director of UI/UX design at the San Francisco studio. I manage the UI/UX team across 3 games, Harry Potter, Hogwarts Mystery, Panda Pop, and also Vineyard Valley.
Amazing. And Jackson, do you mind giving us insight? How did you get to where you're at now with the team at Jam City?
Yeah, so I wasn't originally from, didn't work in games until like 10 years ago. But I always loved playing games. I always loved playing, especially board games, where it was much more social. I could play with my family, play with, I got my start at Zynga. I'm not sure if everybody knows Zynga, but I loved the idea that my aunt that was living on the other side of the country was playing Farmville, and I could, water her crops, etc. So even though my type of game is not the social casual game like Farmville, but I love the social interactions and just be able to play with lots of different ages, different groups, and Jam City seemed like a natural extension of that. I love just working on social games and just being able to reach out to what people don't think of gamers, right? Like a lot of our players are not what you consider a normal gamer, but I think as games evolve, our normal idea of what a gamer is will change as well. Yeah.
I love that. You're at the right place. We're lucky to have you, Jackson. Cool. Moving on over to Vincent.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Vincent Perea. I use he, him pronouns. Brief introduction about myself. So I'm the studio art director for our Burbank office, and I oversee 3 to 4 games right now. We're currently working on some new concepts. So I oversee the development of Disney Emoji Blitz, formerly of Frozen Adventure that just moved to a new studio. And then we have 2 new concepts that we're currently working on in active development. I've been in the industry for probably close to 15 years. And I started as a freelance illustrator, like a 2D freelance illustrator. And then I got an internship opportunity at Disney Interactive. And I was there. After that, I was there for a couple of years, left, worked on an indie game, and then had a couple of other jobs, industry-related jobs, and then found my way back at Disney. And then I was there for another 6-ish years, left to do another indie game. And then I joined Jam City about 2 years ago. Interesting story is the studio I work at now used to be an internal studio at Disney, and now they all work for Jam City on Emoji Blitz. So it was kind of like coming back home, because I'd been working with some of those people and I'd helped build that team for 7 years prior. So it's really exciting to kind of be back with this group because it's such a wonderful, talented group of people.
100% agreed. I love also just the diversity in your backgrounds, from the indie side of stuff to working with like major publishers like Zynga too. I feel like y'all have seen a lot of different types of art positions, different art styles, have worked with different teams as well too. So I'm going to waste no time and I'm going to just dive right into things. I will, more often than not, when I talk to candidates, like especially people who haven't even applied yet, but they're considering applying, for some reason, the biggest kind of ball in their stomach, or the kind of what they're afraid of, is a portfolio. Because for many students, it's their first time putting together a portfolio, or even for like a professional, years in the industry, they're still mastering their portfolio, or how to put it together, or what to put in a portfolio. So I'd like to start with like the must-haves and like what you think the both of y'all separates a really strong portfolio, maybe from like a so-so portfolio. So maybe starting with you, Vincent, I'm curious to hear about what are the must-haves on a portfolio, and for you personally, what stands out sharpest portfolios from the rest?
Great question. I think I'll cover the must-haves last. So I think for me, actually, let me start a little higher level. It's really important to understand that when an art director is looking at portfolios, they're usually trying to fill a very specific role. Like right now, I'm finishing up recruiting for a 2D artist role on Emoji Blitz. So that means I'm looking for a certain type of person, someone that can work in that charming vector-based style. It doesn't mean I'm looking for somebody who can do the kind of rendering you would see at like Riot Games or at Blizzard. I'm looking for something very specific. So the must-haves are really dictated by what that role is. So, and I see it a lot of portfolios. This last round, I saw 300, and that's pretty low considering the kind of role. And so, I just want to let you know that part of it, because I think it's important context, because it's not all created equal, every sort of job opportunity. But, across that spectrum, I think for me, what's a really good portfolio is one that tells me very quickly who you are, what you're good at, and then, how you might fit into this particular role that I have. I think the sharpest portfolios have a really strong point of view. A good portfolio will show off a diversity of skills, like some characters, maybe some environments, but will just show off your absolute greatest hits. Like, what are you good at? And it doesn't matter if you're only good at characters and you have 12 characters and that's your portfolio, that's fantastic. If you do lots of things and you show me 12 images that are the best of your work, then that's great. But the really, really standout ones take a point of view. Some artists will build their portfolios and they're competent, but it sort of looks like, hey, I'm good at everything, I just want a job. And other people, like I talked to somebody in a couple rounds ago who had this portfolio of all very specific, edgy, kind of spooky art. And I don't even know if they were right for the role, but their portfolio really told me who they were. And it really, I remembered it even after like looking at that day, I had looked at 50 portfolios. I remembered it later that night and the day after. So I think your point of view coming across and just showing the absolute best of your work is a real must-have.
I'm like taking down notes as you're talking.
Okay.
Awesome. Jackson, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love what Vincent said as well. I think that a point of view is really important. One of the things that I look at, so when I look, I also kind of talking to what Vincent was applying to is like basically, what role are you looking for, right? So my position is unique because I'm trying to build somebody who can either do UX, right, solve interaction problems, or it could be the studio's asking for somebody who can do UI, somebody who can do really good at layout and typography. So I'm trying to figure out what's the right fit, right, and that would determine like what kind of portfolio you're looking at. So I'll start with UI art. Yeah, so for UI art, actually for both, I'm looking for how you communicate and how you think through problems, right? Both, it's not about what the art is or your technical skill. I mean, some of it is, but I think it's more about how you think, what's your process, how you arrived at that solution, right? So for UI, I'm looking at, is your visual hierarchy correct? Does the player know what's the first thing to tap on, right, or to click on. Is it clear, right? Is the hierarchy correct, right? Like, do people know like how to process it? Is it too cluttered? Typography, right? Is it too small for mobile devices, et cetera? So there's some technical skill involved, more of the UI art, but I'd like to understand, like, if they can communicate and break down how they arrived at the solution and why. That's really great for me. And for UX, it's what problems are you trying to solve, right? Is it are you able to pinpoint, like, this is something that I feel that this app or this game is not doing well? What research did you do, right, to arrive at, like, do you understand the player or the user that you're designing for? Did you interview people? Like, there is a little bit of a UX research part of it, and some candidates have that, some candidates don't, but usually the stronger ones will be able to have a little bit of understanding of how to look for that, right? Fortunately, at Jam City, we have a consumer insights team that we can tap into, which is awesome. And how did you execute on that? And what are the outcomes? Like, what KPIs were you trying to get to, right? Like, what are the metrics of the set? Do you know if you did well? And it's not about if it's successful, to be honest. It's about, like, the process, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of things I look for.
Both such good, I think that the range that both of y'all talked about here, from your thought process and showing like how you can effectively can you communicate to the intention behind the specific art that you put, and keeping it really tailored and focused versus kind of all over. A little bit off the cuff here, on average, how long would you say that each of you spend looking at portfolios? And there's no right or wrong answer here. And I'm sorry to rephrase that. How long or how much time would you say that you spend on, like, looking at one portfolio as you're reviewing many?
Oh, I've been dying to talk to somebody about this question, because it's a lot shorter. I think about it a lot, and I think I've written like a couple of sample Medium articles about it, and then decided maybe that I shouldn't do that. Art directors are very busy people. Like, for me, I'm both Jackson and I were working across multiple games. My team size is 16, and it's interdisciplinary. I have a range of different tasks, and when it comes time to look at portfolios, I have to squeeze that into my normal day. Mm-hmm. So, how do you look at 300 portfolios in a week? Well, the only way you do that is by, for me, is by segmenting out how I look at people's portfolios. So when this is literally how it goes down for me, and everyone has a different process. But we have this like program where, like, we see candidates, and I don't even look at your resume. I go right to your portfolio, and then you get about a minute. And if in that minute, it looks like you in any way relate to the job that I'm looking for, then I will continue to look at your portfolio for another two to 3 minutes. And then if I feel like you have the qualifications, I will set you aside. And then I do that through everyone. And then I will go back. So that 300 then gets down to about 30. And then I will spend about 5-10 minutes on each of those 30 portfolios. But after looking at like hundreds and hundreds of portfolios every year or every quarter, depending on how we're ramping up, I've gotten a pretty good sense of like what I'm looking for right away. So with that in mind, the one thing I want to add for my must-haves is there are two things I think you can do that are really, really practical. One, take your best image and get that vetted by somebody you trust, another artist or another or friend or a former teacher. Whatever your best image is, put that first. That should be the first thing that shows up on your page. Number two, make sure your website is easy to navigate, because if it's difficult to navigate and then I don't really know what's going on with your work, I don't have a lot of incentive to keep moving forward. And when I have 300 other potential people, that could be the tipping point of whether or not your portfolio gets looked at.
Such good points there too. I've heard that a lot. A lot of art directors that I've worked with have said like that those first few seconds, that first image should be like strong, like right away, catch my eye kind of thing. So awesome. Jackson, how long would you say you're spending?
Yeah, Vincent, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's like UI UX 101 right there, right?
Yeah, especially for you, because it's like you're actually looking, when you're looking at a website, you're looking at the application of the discipline.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I have a little bit different approach when I first look at the resume, because it's the easier one. That's like the first thing, right? So the one thing I look at is, are they I get lots of resumes, and sometimes they're engineers, there are sociologists because they want to do UX research. There's a kind of a little bit of a misunderstanding of what user experience is, right?
Yeah.
So there's there's people who just do graphic design, which is okay, but I usually look for in those cases I usually look for do they have any game experience, right? Are they able to understand some basic game design mechanics and game systems thinking? Because otherwise it's just I want to make sure they succeed once they get into the role, and if they're just making packaging, I can't see how they can succeed in the role. So I really kind of scan the resume really quickly, but if something things that catch my eye are game interest, right? Prototyping, Unity experience is one of the things that I look at. I look at if they have some graphic design skills, some at least typography and layout skills. So those are things that I'm kind of scanning, and then I go to their portfolio website. And like Vincent said, I'm like, I prefer that they actually own the space, right? They've thought about the interaction of how I'm moving through their portfolio. So those are some things that I really look at. How do they present their best work? Are they just showing everything that they've done in the past 10 years or 5 years? They're showing like drawing 101 stuff that doesn't apply to, like, they want to apply that skills. So I think I'm just thinking about, are they kind of designing, and are they kind of making the portfolio there's a focus and a point of view, like what Vincent said, right? And I think there's also, like, I know that recently people are saying no cover letter, but actually, if there's a cover letter, it gives me that a little bit of an insight, a point of view of like why they're interested in working at Jam City versus like just having me figure out like why they're interested in the position. Or I think they give me a little bit of an editorial view about what how they're thinking as well. So I'd say that.
I agree. I do want to add to that really quick, because I'll look at portfolio, because for me it's so like my role is so much more visual. It's with UIUX, it kind of crosses over into game design. So I think that makes complete sense why you kind of look at a resume first. Cover letters, I have passed people forward with them. I have passed people forward without them. I think it helps. But if you're going to write a cover letter, here's a little tip: make it short, and let me know where you want my job. I don't, I find it very sweet to read letters of people that say, I've been drawing since I was a kid. And it's like, yeah, me too. I've been drawing since I was a kid too, and I love it. I love it for you as an artist, but like as a manager, if I have to weed through that, I'm not going to finish reading your cover letter. Tell me why you want my job. Why do you want to be a game developer? Why do you want to work at Jam City? Why do you want to, this is your opportunity where like you are writing a direct message to me. Do you want to tell me what I already know, which is that you love art and you want to be a professional artist? No, tell me why you want my job. Why should I give you my job?
What I love about the both of y'all is y'all didn't throw cover letters completely out the window, because from a recruiting lens, I'll tell you, I've read cover letters when I'm making the decision of a yes or a no on this person. If I'm kind of in between, the cover letter will help me decide. If the cover letter reads as like you copied and pasted this, less chance. But if it reads just like to your point, Vincent, if it's tailored to the role at Jam City, they've done research on Jam City or whatever the case is, higher chance I'm going to put that person forward.
Just to add to that as well, Andrew, is that if they've kind of did their homework and did some research about Jam City, about the games that we make, that's a huge plus. I mean, that's I'm already thinking about them. They've made an impact already.
It shows, right? Preparation 100% shows in the interview process, from the resume, portfolio, cover letter. Well, I have a lot of people kind of in my network who've recently graduated, whether it's art school or degree in a specific art or design, and many of these people don't have portfolios. And I remember whenever I hear that, it's like, oh, you have to put something together, y'all, because portfolios is so important. But for many people, that's the hardest step, is starting to make the portfolio. Can you maybe give us some tips or some advice you would give to someone who's beginning their first portfolio? And I'm going to add on top of that, tell me a little bit about your first portfolio and where it was at. I'll start with Jackson on that one.
Oh, man. So I'm gonna date me, but so I made my portfolio in Flash, right? So that's a obsolete technology right now. But I wanted to make it like, very whiz bang. Like it was not about communication. It was like, I'm gonna impress you with all the things that I know about Flash, right? Probably not a
Oh man, I
great
remember
approach,
that.
right? But that,
I remember this.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's like I'm gonna make things move. Like everything's gonna move on my website. It's gonna be like motion. It's gonna be an animation masterpiece. Uh, Probably, so that's kind of the things that I did. I will say that I probably threw a lot of stuff onto my portfolio, like any kind of identity work, um, you know, um, interaction work. There was uh, I wish there was a way to like focus a little bit better. I think that would be something that I would probably work on. Just show the best pieces that, especially that's relevant to the position I'm looking for. Yeah, and the other thing is I changed my portfolio. Like I mean, I was an introduction designer, so I was every 3 years I would be changing the style of it because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this style this style is trending right now, right? So I'm going to move to this. It's not going to look like it's made by a robot. It's going to look all organic now.
Yeah.
Let's say. So that's some of the I don't know if it's mistakes or not, but some of the things that some of the things I've learned,
Yeah.
in the over the years.
Yeah. You make a lot of portfolios over your career.
Yes.
Um, what I have this like very, what I was going to say is this is like, if you have finished artwork or really good sketches in a nice format and you have an Instagram, then boom, you have the capacity to build yourself a portfolio. You do not have to have your own website. You do not have to like overly design your portfolio. In fact, I would prefer you don't, because I don't care about your website design. I care about your artwork. Especially for me, I need concept artists, 3D artists, 2D production artists. I need, animators, and like none of that needs to be like really well put together. I get, or like it doesn't. Your portfolio doesn't need to be overly designed. I just want to see it all cleanly. And I'm a little jealous of people that are starting out now because I see some of these portfolios, and there's a lot of like portfolio templates now. Like even now, like I have like a simple Squarespace website, no frills. It just shows my artwork. And there's lots of them out there that some are available for free. I saw this portfolio the other day from this amazing woman who was 22, and it knocked me out because I was not that together at 22, and she's not even out of college yet. She's like a junior, and I was like, what is happening out with young people now? It's just unreal the amount of access to art to cheap free art education you have. Anyway, so your portfolio could take many different shapes. My first portfolio, I had to get. I was a traditional artist, so I was doing these like big watercolor paintings, these like storybook style watercolor paintings with like adult themes because I thought it was really cool. I had to get them photographed onto these really big negatives, and then I scanned those in and printed them out on like watercolor Epson paper and put them in a leather bound book. That was my first portfolio, and I had like 12 images. And the nice thing about that was each piece was expensive to add to my portfolio. So I was forced to choose what was the best work and how did I want to represent myself. But now, like, you don't really have an excuse not to have a portfolio. Like, if you have an Instagram and you could carefully curate out all the other weird parts of social media and just focus on your artwork, and that's a portfolio. I will look at someone's Instagram as a portfolio. I don't care, or just even just like put all your work together in a PDF. You don't want it to be like sloppy, but you don't need it to be completely over designed.
Yeah. Agreed. I'm not.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because I think that I also use Squarespace and I think it's a great tool. I think that as far as a UI UX designer, I sometimes they use Behance or ArtStation or DeviantArt. And then that tells me that they're probably more of a concept artist than like a UI artist, right? Because I really do think that if anything, at the bare minimum, use Wix or Squarespace something that like you can add a little bit of your own branding and like you have a little bit of control of how I navigate through, right? Because I want to see that and be able to see how you approach interaction design, right? Is your website usable, right? But if you're relying on a platform like Behance or ArtStation, I don't know. It's just kind of like it loses a little bit that that uniqueness that I'm looking for. That that point of view that Vincent was saying, which is really important.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing those two up, and I hope it kind of demonstrates too. Like both Jackson and I are looking for different kinds of artists based on our discipline. So I would encourage people to use like free stuff like Behance or ArtStation because it just allows me to see the work. Because the work I'm looking for, like I have a couple UI UX artists in my studio, and when I'm looking for UI UX artists, I do all the considerations Jackson has as well, because that's the discipline is communication, flow of like user interface. So yeah, but it's just like each discipline kind of looks for different things.
For sure. Awesome. And Vincent, you touched on something that I would love to just revisit for a second too, which is around the specific art that you pick for your portfolio. I was going to save this for a little bit later in the conversation, but we can go here. If somebody is faced with that decision around like, what I have so many different school projects, I've done side gigs, I've done all of this. I have no idea what to pick to put in this portfolio. And on top of that, like what length should my portfolio be as well too? So I'll start with Jackson just for this one, just to hear a little bit more from the UI UX first, which is how should a UI UX artist approach that question around what to put in their portfolio and the length or like how long their portfolio is?
Yeah, so I would keep it to like 5 to 6 of your best pieces that really show your thinking and process. And then in each of those projects, go really deep, right? I want to know how you from start to finish, what you're thinking as you complete this, right? The research, like I said, like the problems that you're trying to solve. I want to see the beginning sketches, any mistakes, and like, if I would be really transparent and honest. Like, hey, I thinking about like I would want to see there's 3 concepts I created and we whittled it down to 1, and because A and C didn't work, right? I want to know why, right? And why it was whittled down and how you broke it down into execution and like possibly even creating a clickable prototype if possible, right? If you have some prototyping skills. Sorry, so this background noise. And the other things is like I want to know like once you showed other people like this prototype or your concept, what was their reactions, right? Was it successful? Did you hit the marks? Did you achieve what you were hoping for? Was there any insights or surprises or kind of like unexpected things? It's totally normal to have those. And additionally, I think one of the things that people don't really do, especially for students, a lot of interaction or game projects are not just done by one person. So I want to know like who worked on the art of it, right? Or if it's your own solo project, then fine, then you don't have to show that. But most of the projects I've worked on, even when I was in school, was not solo projects. So I want to know like was there somebody who did the development for it, right? And I think that's just being honest and just because sometimes you don't know, right? Like you hire for a UI artist and you find out that most of it, like 50% of it was made by a concept artist, right? So I want to know exactly what your involvement is in your role in the project. Yeah.
Cool. That's a good point. All right. Yeah. Vincent, what about you? Your input on how people should pick or what people should pick for their portfolio and their length?
Yeah, there's something that Jackson mentioned that I wanted to really hit on because it's such a good point, and especially an important thing to understand about game development is that game development is all about problem solving. It's all about like everything we do is some weird little problem. It's like, okay, well, how do I make this this green gem stand out from this red gem? How do I make sure that the player knows exactly when and where to touch this certain button or bit of interaction? So I think in a game dev portfolio, the things I like best is when I can see a progression of work. If an artist just shows me finished work, that's great, because at the end of the day, I'm asking for finished work. But the reality is that 90% of the time, I'm going to be talking with an artist about work that's in progress, in really rough stages. So sometimes I'll see people that have like an illustration section or a sketch and a sketches section, and they'll be completely different. Whereas what I love is when I see like a page of one project focus, and I get to see all the steps you walk through it. That portfolio really stands out to me, because if I can see like a thumbnail of like your image or like some rough sketches of your characters, and I can see them over time tighten up and get stronger and stronger and more focused, it shows me that you could work within a production pipeline, and that it gives me a little sense of how you think. And so, not necessarily a hard requirement for every job, but I think that I think it's just a really nice way to structure your portfolio, because then your portfolio should really tell a story. It shouldn't just be a gallery of images. It's like telling me who you are, how you think.
Such good ones. That's something that I've never thought about either, too, is can students, or anyone for that matter, show their thought process, the different steps that they took in that.
Absolutely.
And I can see why, from like a leadership, like an art director, UIUX, that's so helpful, because you could see, like to your point, Vincent, can they work in a pipeline? Can you see different steps of this versus just the finished product of something too?
Yeah.
All really good things. And to kind of now go to the flip side of that coin as well too, and talking a little bit about what makes you like stop in your tracks. Like if you're looking at a portfolio, what's maybe a few things that, oh, this is where I'm going to stop. Maybe it loses your attention a little bit, or maybe you just completely say, okay, unfortunately, I'm going to move away from it. What are some of those like stopping points, starting with you, Vincent?
Ooh, good question. Honestly, the biggest stopping point most often is that people applying for the wrong job. Like if I have like a 3D artist, and if I'm recruiting for a 3D artist role, and I get like a UI UX artist or like a 2D artist, this tends to happen if the role just says 2D artist. So I'll get like 3D artists, motion designers, animators, and it kind of hurts a little bit, because I see so many amazing portfolios and I have to reject a lot, almost all of them. So I think that's probably the biggest showstopper. They say like, if you kind of just like sort of, if you meet some of the requirements, you should apply for the job, is some advice I was given when I was younger. But, I don't think you should apply for the wrong job, because, if you're like a realistic painter and you're applying to work at Emoji Blitz, like you don't want that job, it's so don't do it. And so those are the number one things that stop me. I think the other thing sometimes that stops me is, and it's just hard to quantify, but sometimes if like it doesn't look like you're ready to work in like a professional setting, if your work is still like, isn't quite solid enough. And so I would say like, if you haven't been doing artwork for very long, like try and build a network of people like either online or whatever, and try and see what the kind of general response is to your work, just before you kind of get involved in kind of submitting artwork. But I think the big one is just more of like people applying for the wrong job, because this career comes with a lot of like rejection, early on. And so why do that to yourself? I guess, it's going to happen. So why do it to yourself willingly?
Good points. Jackson?
Yeah, that's a hard question. But I think Vincent hit it on the nail. It's like, like I said, I get a lot of resumes that are like concept artists that wants to do UI design, which is actually okay, but I want to see UI design in the portfolio. I get a lot of UX research resumes as well, and engineers, and a lot of them, I get a lot of product design resumes as well. And when I say product design, they're designing apps, which I think is okay if you have a really great portfolio. But I think it's not necessarily a stopper, but I do want to know that you have an interest in games, that that if you get hired, you're not trying to figure out how game design works, right? I think if you just play games, you might probably have a good understanding of like, what is a leaderboard, right? If I ask you what a leaderboard is, I think you should be able to like click onto that. What if I say, okay, these XP points, XP needs to be here. you would never get that until they start working. But I think that would actually just come into interview, and I think the cover letter here would be helpful as far as like, oh, you definitely, if you don't have a lot of experience in games, which is okay, but definitely explain like what games you play, when games have UX, like you think has good UX, right? And additionally, that would be helpful is that I get a lot of resumes and portfolios that their background is not in games, it's in marketing or product design, but they've actually did a deconstruct of a game of one of their favorite games, and they said like, hey, I play Stardew Valley, I play Final Fantasy, and I really think that this UX could be improved by this, and they actually did some work on their own time to actually put that in their portfolio, and it looks amazing. Where they're like, and I'm like, did you work on this game? Like, no, I just did this on my own time, and that's in another way. I'm like, oh wow, this person is really passionate about what they want to do. So that always really says something. I always remember that, and even like now, I can clearly remember the candidates that went that extra effort to really show that they love games.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched on this theme that I've been talking with different teams and leaders with throughout this GGP Fest, which is around passion projects. And I know I didn't tee the question up to y'all earlier, but I would love to get your kind of impromptu thoughts right now. What is your perspective on these passion projects that maybe students or industry switchers could take as they're thinking about breaking into the industry? Are they valuable? And if so, how does one start one or pick one? Whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, I mean, one of the hardest things, especially after, like, let's say you go to a traditional art school or you do Gnomon or you do something else. The best things about, going through those systems is that somebody else is deciding for you what you're supposed to work on, right, which is just like having a career. And I noticed when I got out of art school that a lot of people would struggle with that motivation to keep going forward. Mm-hmm. So I think passion projects are great. And I think the best thing about a passion project is it's something that you're passionate about. And so, if I'm looking for somebody specific, like, somebody to work on Emoji Blitz, let's say, and somebody has in their portfolio, like some other project that they're really, really passionate about, then like, it kind of just shows that you have the ambition and the wherewithal to like, work autonomously on your own without an assignment, which I think is really powerful, whatever it is. Sometimes it doesn't really relate. So if it relates directly to like games, excellent. If it doesn't, then you can still have it in your portfolio. Just don't make it the centerpiece of your portfolio is what I would say. But I just think that's good advice for an artist anyway. I don't, to hell with the portfolio. You should just keep doing, you should do what you love for as long as possible. You'll learn a lot, especially if you care a lot about it.
I love the point that you brought up around passion projects and show that you can work kind of in an autonomous space or with little direction, because you really are self-motivating yourself when getting through a passion project. Like, you're the person that's managing your time, you're the person that's putting together the project. So that's such a good point. Jackson, thoughts? Go Vincent.
So I was just gonna say one other thing is that, like, because I've looked at so many portfolios, sometimes I see the same people a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And if a year has gone by and I see you again, which is likely, then and your portfolio is the same, it says something about you. And it's not necessarily a judgment call, like you're not motivated. Maybe you had another job or something happened. But if I see you a year in and your portfolio shows some other sort of work or development, I think it says something about you too. It says that you're kind of dedicated to trying to find a job in this career, and that, like I said, you could work autonomously. So those little things help a lot too. Like, your portfolio should be like a living document. It could be changing all the time.
Yeah. Sorry,
Jackson, go ahead.
Oh no, that was great point. I think that you got to reach your, something that I've learned recently is that there's an S curve in your career or your learning ability, right? It's like if you hit that top and you're not growing, you got to hit that, you got to hit that other and in everybody's growth time, it's, you hit that plateau, and how do you move ahead of that, right? Which is really important. So if you're not continuing adding and updating your portfolio, even if you're not looking, just continue adding to that, right? Like Vincent, you said something about you have a blog. That's awesome. I've struggled with putting a blog together. So kudos to you. Maybe I should take some tips from you. But that's like showing that this is good advice as well. It's like, if you have a blog, maybe you can do some UX teardowns of certain games. That shows how you're communicating, right? And that's something that I love looking at as well.
Yeah.
And just kind of going back to the question is that, sorry, can you repeat the question again? I got.
No. It was, all good points. It was around passion projects. And do you kind of,
oh, yes.
Is there value in them?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I love passion projects. I think that, you can be very reactive, right? Which is like you're waiting for work and somebody to tell you what to do, right? Like, okay, these are the questions, these are the problems that I need you to solve for me, right? And then, the designer or the artist can actually just, okay, I'll do it and work within that framework. That next level is where you're asking the questions and challenge yourself. It's like, hey, how can this game be better? Or what are the questions that I have in my, about my trade or my industry, right? How do I add value to my own industry? And that's a whole nother level, which it takes a lot of passion and curiosity. I think curiosity is a big, that's the big thing here, is that, are you curious enough to say, hey, things could be different, it could be better, right? And where you're proactive about looking for answering those things that people aren't necessarily looking for. There's always going to be player unmet needs, right? Like, the player didn't know they wanted this, but then you created a need for them to want this, right? That's huge, right? And that's something that where innovation happens, is that you're not just like looking for challenge. You're not just answering the problems, right? You're creating new things to solve for, right?
Totally. The both of y'all have had my favorite answers to that question all weekend long. I love the idea around that it's self-motivating. It shows that independence. It shows you can be in an autonomous space as well too. It's like such a good way of thinking about passion projects. I think a lot of times students might feel discouraged to start them because they're not sure what it shows about them that makes them stronger. But I think the points that you all just mentioned are absolutely there. One of the kind of questions that constantly came up as I was actually researching and preparing for this conversation was around what is more important in your portfolio to show? Is it your technical skill set or your overall taste? Like, what is the priority here? So I'll start with you, Jackson. Your thoughts, technical skill set, taste, what matters to you?
You mean taste as in style? Or,
yeah. Exactly.
Okay. I would say I kind of I kind of thought taste was like maybe like how you think or the process, but now that I understand its style, I would say technical skill. I think that I would be looking at somebody like, if they're, there's definitely going to be technical skills, like when you get down to the production and development, like can you prototype, right? Can you are you good at graphic design? Are you can you work in Unity, right? At least not at least know the limitations and how to get in and out of it. There's some familiarity there that you feel like you're not lost in, or you have to relearn it. I think that actually a lot of students nowadays have that now, which is amazing. I think style-wise, that can be, I think, taught, right? Or there could be other people that could help out on that. So I would definitely lean on technical skill. And if that means like problem solving or, just how like a very systematic way of thinking about problems, I think that I would lean toward, technical.
Yeah.
Okay. Vincent, I don't know why something tells me that yours is going to be different, but it might be the same. I don't know. What would
it totally depends on the role. It really depends. The kind of roles I recruit for are pretty diverse. So I would say I agree with Jackson. If I'm looking for somebody to join the studio, because I recruit for a couple different things. Like one, if I'm recruiting for somebody to sit there 40 hours every week in the studio and do work for us, then probably technical ability is better. I kind of took taste as like, kind of your not necessarily your style, but your sense of taste, I guess is the best way to put that. Like, the most important thing you can develop as an artist is having good taste, because your skill can actually grow. But if you have bad taste, it's so much harder to train that. Like if you don't know that like two colors clash horribly together and you can't make that work, and you don't know it innately, then like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to train that out of you. But if you have certain challenges like drawing hands, for example, but you're amazing at drawing faces, I could teach you how to draw hands. I could probably teach you about color theory too. But it's just like technical skill is something that you learn and can grow and will continue to get better at. But taste is something that it takes a long time to develop. And the way you grow that is by really inundating yourself with like great media, great art, great comics, great games, what have you, and like trying to understand why people think they're good, that sort of a thing. But yeah, like I said, so I'm looking for technical skill. It's very important if you're going to join the studio, like, and more of like, not like you have to be the most buttoned up, but like, do you show the capacity? Am I convinced you can get better? Now, if I'm just looking for a concept artist, then I'm usually looking for a very specific style. We just hired somebody a couple months back for a pitch that we were doing, and all my artists were busy, and I wanted a very particular art style. So I found that person because they did that style. Like it's just like really expressive kind of European cartoony style. And I was like, oh, like, let me just find that person. They exist out there. So we worked with them for a couple months, and it was fantastic. And so there it's like, I care a little less about the technical skill because all I want from them is the final image. But when you're working in the studio, I care about much more than just the final image. I care about your thought process, whether you can work with engineers, whether you can learn the complications of working in a game engine. Can you take directions from a design spec? And that's all pretty technical. So it's kind of a balance of the two.
Yeah.
And just to get bounce off what Vincent said as well, is that a lot of the style comes not from sometimes the art or narrative, right? But I will agree. I don't want to say taste or style. It's a sensibility, right? There's it comes from your culture. Like, did you really experience a lot of culture and like can soak in like all these stimulus from outside, right? And I think that really builds in like your sensibility, your taste, right? That helps. Yeah. Especially for a UX person who should be empathetic and thinking about like different cultures and et cetera, different users.
Take in good art, absorb good art, like see, things outside of what you're working on, all good points too. Well, I know we're nearing to time here, so I did want to leave y'all with one question, which is around advice that y'all would have for yourselves. As a designer, as an artist, thinking back to when you first, began in your careers, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice, it doesn't have to be in relevance to your portfolio. It can just be in the way that you move through your career and the way that you expressed your styles or whatever it is. What piece of advice would you give yourself? I'll start with you, Vincent.
Oh, okay. I think the biggest advice is from like a visual designer's perspective, is to, when you're looking for a career and like you're choosing on what artwork to work on to like build out your portfolio, like do what you love. I always got the best jobs when I showed a portfolio that was filled with things I enjoyed doing. And sometimes that means you're not going to be right for every job. I spent a lot of time applying for every art job because I had good technical skills and I could work in a diversity of styles. But I always got the best jobs when I would dedicate my portfolio to the things that I truly loved, not things that I knew would get me a job. Because I could do turnaround drawings, I could draw realistically, stuff like that. But when I would just focus on like what I love, what's like storytelling and characters, I always did better in the jobs that I got offered. And it might be hard at first, but you're going to find your spot. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And so, if you like to design alien horses and that's like all you really want to do, then be the best alien horse designer, because someone's going to want alien horses someday. you know, and then eventually that'll get you to somewhere else, you know. But then when you're starting out, like just pick a lane and just do it as well as you can do it.
Solid. Jackson?
I completely echo what Vincent said. You know, growing up in an Asian family, you know, we were either, it's like my parents pushed me to either lawyer, doctor, or go to business, right? And I loved playing games. I never thought games would be a viable career. So I spent a lot of my years, you know, doing a lot of websites and interaction websites for, you know, banks and, you know, whatever was UX, right? But I don't know why it didn't click that I could work in games until, you know, like 10 or 12 years ago, where it's like, oh my God, this is a viable career. Games is a business. I'm doing everything that I love, like, you know, experience design, there's audio design, there is interaction, animation, you know, great art, storytelling, all combined, and all the things that I love doing in one medium, right? And I think if I was to be able to like time travel, I would have said, like, you know, hey, really do what, like, you know, what Vincent said, follow your passion, do what you really love, and, you know, the world will catch up to you, right? And like the things that you do, if you do it well, it will become a commodity and it'll be something relevant to business. Business people will flock to you for doing whatever you do, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a better note to end things on. I mean, for both of y'all, Vincent, Jackson, thank you so much. This has been very informative for me as not even an artist or a designer, and just the way that I talk to artists and designers and the feedback that I'm going to share going forward. I've learned a ton in the last hour. So thank you for your insights on all of this, and for everyone who tuned in. You know, thank you. Hopefully you were able to take 1, 2, or 3 things away from our leaders here from our studios. On behalf of, you know, Jam City, a huge thank you also goes out to GGP for hosting us this weekend from all 6 sessions. We had a lot of fun, and we're so appreciative of the work that GGP does and partnering with us here at Jam City. But without further ado, we'll wrap things up here again. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Jackson. Happy Pride, everyone, and we'll see everyone a little bit later.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.